A transformation is unfolding in the world of construction, faster and larger than ever before.
Now this is a reality. We gotta build.
And today's guest stands at the center of this shift. Michaela Harms, Vice President of Mass Timber at Sterling Structural, an engineer and a strategist shaping the future of sustainable building.
I think the demand is about to go really high, really fast.
She dismantles myths around forestry and explains why management means protection, not destruction.
We are so far from deforestation. We're overstocked. We are overdue.
We dive into the housing crisis and the new era of construction speed, and why the demand for mass timber is about to surge. This is a story about materials, forests, communities, and the future we are building next.
We need markets to regeneratively and sustainably manage these forests.
Without further ado, thank you so much for joining us again. We're on the next series and the next podcast episode here on the Wood World podcast. I'm your host, and my name is Vadim Kovalev. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. Her name is Michaela. She is the Vice President of Mass Timber at Sterling Structural. And today, I want to have her share her passion and her commitment to the industry, her journey to where she is today, and what the future looks like. I believe she's one of the thought leaders, and I'm excited, Michaela, to have you on. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. What a nice intro. Very kind.
I'd like to read what I read on what I saw on the internet for the people who don't really know what the company that you represent does. I'm just going to read it and would love for you to comment on it as well as we go.
Great.
So, Sterling Structural provides a sustainable and affordable cross-laminated timber (CLT) option for the North American building design and construction industry. The Terra Lam structural product line provides a competitively priced, prefabricated mass timber panel that is comparable with a range of structural systems in wall, floor, and roof applications. And so you guys claim that all Terra Lam products are proudly grown, sourced, and manufactured right here in the great US of A.
Yes, indeed.
So joining us today, like I said earlier, is Michaela, originally trained in Helsinki in southern Finland, a country that lives and breathes the forest. And I'm super excited to have you here with us today.
Great. Thank you so much.
So here's my first question for you, Michaela.
Mm-hmm.
If you could, imagine you're an artist and using a wide paintbrush quickly in like 30 seconds, give or take, please tell the audience, where in the wood world do you fit? What is it that you do and your company does?
Well, where Sterling fits, the company is right as you described it. We are a cross-laminated timber manufacturer, a 75-year-old company that's had deep relationships with the southern pine forests and expanding into our spruce pine fir south forest. And where I fit, though, is I fit a little different. I've really kind of spent my career, and I think some of that comes from coming from Helsinki, from my education, but also my upbringing, really trying to connect the supply chain all the way from the forest to where we're delivering it. And looking at that process, I'm a structural civil engineer by background, but I've always worked in manufacturing. And for me, this industry and the manufacturing of wood products goes back to the people that it supports in the local woodland communities. That's where everything starts. And so if you don't have that connection across the way, you kind of lose the beauty of the industry. So for me, I had to understand end to end. So I've worked across that supply chain, and I work every day to find what's not connecting and reconnect it with the great network of people in this country and in North America, trying to show that this is a great product, and thriving markets for every part of the tree is how we keep moving forward with our beautiful forests.
So Michaela, I looked at your LinkedIn. You're an engineer, a researcher, a strategist. How specifically did your journey lead you to mass timber?
Well, it's funny. I have an engineering friend in the industry who recently I saw him speak somewhere, and he told a really similar story. And what's interesting is he grew up really close to where I grew up. And one of our stories of why we got into this industry and how we got here is we're both from rural Wisconsin. And as kids, when tornadoes would come through, they would knock down trees, right? And I always remember, it is so funny to hear him say this, because I was like, oh my God, this is my childhood too. Going out after that and taking those trees and building cool things. Like that was, we just wanted to have that fun and see what that material could do for forts or things like that. And so I always kind of I love that origin, because I really grew up, always being in the forest, always being outside. So I think I was really given that connection from the beginning. And then fast forward, I found myself, I was working on a lot of farms and getting into natural building, which kind of exposed me to timber framing, cob, all of those types of things. And then I kind of took my sweet time, but I finally went to college in Helsinki, Finland, where I always had an engineering mind. I always loved tinkering with engines or, building things. And so I ended up in this engineering program in Helsinki, and everything, all the construction was timber, so I was almost deluded and thinking yeah, of course, that's what we do. We build with timber. Obviously that's a little unique there. And so when I came back here, I found myself in manufacturing, because I wasn't going to be a very good design engineer. I knew nearly nothing about steel or concrete, because I never had any classes in it. And all the construction sites we were on were timber. But the other kind of connection that I make to my upbringing is, when you look around these areas, mass timber or glulam or heavy timber, that was agricultural building materials. You see old glulam barns, and it was this very accessible thing. So when I got into the industry and I was working for a heavy timber company, and I was like, this is not super accessible. This is very much a high-end, high margin material. And so as I worked through my career, I've always been trying to reconnect that. How do we make this a very accessible material? And how do we make this a very affordable material that also brings jobs back to these communities? Logging, trucking, all of it, right? Forestry. And then when I found Sterling, and at that time they were just doing industrial matting. So they're the biggest CLT manufacturer in the world, but a lot of it has been focused in site access markets, which is super cool too. Because
for somebody who doesn't realize what that is, can you briefly explain?
You got it. Site access markets for mass timber are the big mats that they put out, or temporary roads for heavy equipment that goes in for infrastructure development, whether that's transmission line work, which is big right now with all of our data centers going in, oil and gas, renewable energy. Because when you're going through either farm fields or rural areas or environmentally sensitive areas, you have to protect the ground as you take this big machinery through. And so that's the background of Sterling. And they were kind of hand making these bolted access mats, or the legacy product, which is big hardwood timber mats. And then they were real huge innovators in the site access industry. And they said, wait a minute, let's make this engineered CLT product.
Wow.
Let's rank it out. We make a panel every 65 seconds.
Wow.
And then we can make these, hundreds of miles of roads with this product.
Wow.
And I saw their facility, and I saw them manufacturing that way after I'd been in most of the North American, quite a few of the European facilities. And I was like, no one is making this much material. This is super cool. And that brain clicked and said, okay, Michaela, this scale at this level is how you get to accessibility. These people might have the answer to making CLT affordable, accessible, get it into the strip malls, get it into every building we can possibly get it into.
Wow.
And then that's where the spark kind of began between Carter Sterling, the former CEO and one of the Sterling family members, third generation, and still strategic advisor for the company, and Kevin Shu, who was the VP of innovation. And so kind of just this person in R&D who was looking at structural markets, and then we launched the structural division in 2022.
So the question is, was there a moment that you can pinpoint when you thought, this is the material of the future?
Oh, absolutely. I've always felt that about timber in general, but there was a really specific moment at Sterling. The first time I went there, and I think it was maybe the third or fourth Mass Timber Conference, I was there and I was with PFS TICO at the time, an international certification agency. So I was doing structural certification for engineered wood products. And Carter Sterling came up to me, and I didn't know him, and he was like, we're the biggest manufacturer in the world, and we're in Chicago, and he's got the best personality. He can just light up a room. And I was like, I've never heard of you. Because I was just like totally delusional, And I was like, who's that guy? What was that all about? And then we started talking more, and I agreed to come down because they were like, we want to have factory production control like we see in, PRG 320 certified structural CLT. We want that sense of quality and auditing and factory production control for our site access products, because they were always wanting to be on the cutting edge of highly engineered, high quality. And so I live in Wisconsin. It's only a few hours away. I said, yeah, we can look at setting up a factory production control program. And I went down, and that first tour really was where my brain went, because it's like, I'd never seen that much lumber in my life. I've been in so many places. I've been in so many.
Wow.
They, at that time, had 16 million board feet underneath the roof. And so you walk in, and there's just lumber everywhere. And then saw the line run and saw how fast they were manufacturing this product. And again, I've come from auditing a lot of these facilities that were making much less, it's a different style, right? It's a different style of manufacturing. And so it was that moment that clicked, and I was like, you guys got to get into mass timber fast, because we need this kind of scale.
That's incredible. Can I ask you another question? You kind of skimmed over it, but since you stated that you were in Finland and that's kind of where your career started taking shape to some degree, that's a country or a region that deeply understands trees and forests. And you mentioned it, but do you think that Scandinavian mindset maybe shaped the way that you're thinking about building with wood today?
Yeah, I could see that. So first of all, there's tons of people from the Nordics that settled in this region of the States. And my grandma's actually from Sweden. Wow. And I've always had this connection to forest that was put into me. I really owe that to my mother. But I did a year of school in Norway too. I went to folk schools there. And then when I did my 4 years in Helsinki, I actually, that was one of the things that always drew me. I loved being in the forest up there. I loved being all around all these people that had that sense of love and ownership of the forest. Because it was similar to what I knew and how I grew up. And I do think there's a big reason that, or there is a cultural thing there that is super cool that could, come across the ocean, make its way to Nebraska, make its way to Wisconsin, and that can still be in me. So there is this cultural love of the forest that I probably owe to some of my Nordic roots, and then going back and, doing my education from that mentality. I do think that it definitely helps, but it was the exact thing I wanted. So, it manifested all together.
And Michaela, people sometimes say that wood is unique as a material and it even has a soul or something like that. So from your perspective, what is wood to you? Is it just a material, a resource? Is it something more?
Oh, it's so much more. I mean, this is my one thing too that I always talk about with I've seen specifications, architectural specifications that'll say oh, I want this, but I want no knots, and I want everything to be the exact same color. And I'm like, that takes away all the beauty and the soul of the forest, because what we see in a knot, to me, I think of all those cool branches you get to climb, and all that reaching out to access sunlight, and this material that's self-engineered for the last 200 million years. I think you can't just think of it as a material. You have to think of it all the way back to the root. And you have to think of it as a symbiotic relationship. That goes back to the conversation of how we're kind of in this generational shift where reconnecting the material to the forest again and seeing that that's how it should be. Like, we're supposed to be having this back and forth with forests because they're regenerative and we're regenerative. And that relationship of care for the forest, what it gives back to us, and how we have that more symbiotic relationship is what's so important to lead to healthy management. Because that very like hands off, I'm not a part of this, like it's over there approach is how we get in overstocked, diseased, like forests that are end up being tinder baskets and leading to a lot of like wildfire. So
It's true.
I think this reconnection of like, no, this is a tree, and it was like this beautiful tree, and how cool is it that it gets to be another thing now, and how cool is it that we could deconstruct this and turn it into animal bedding? Like, it's never ending of what wood gives back and what forests give back. And so I think it's way more. It's way more than
I have to agree with you, but I just don't think that, I mean, you're in it, I'm in it on a daily basis. A lot of the folks that are in our industry that I would say inside the wood world understand that there's this life cycle and the whole supply chain, so nothing gets wasted. But I mean, like, listen, I don't know if you followed or seen, but like I go across the planet talking to people like in Nashville. I just went down the streets and interviewed people, young and old, of all walks of life. And I hear firsthand, interviewing kind of the general public, random sampling in different cities. And I can see this sense of that today, loggers, mill workers, or people who are like, you know, cutting the trees down or felling the forest, they're portrayed as part of the problem. But without them, there is no sustainable construction that we talk about down the value stream. So how do we change that negative public perception in your mind?
Yeah. Oh man, this is my whole career. But I think it's changing because when I first started, I remember I was at the Timber Framers Guild conference and I was speaking, and I started talking about regenerative forestry. I was working for a heavy timber manufacturer at the time. And this guy, like, I mean, it was straight out of like a movie, like in the background, total, like the exact epitome of what you would stereotypically call like a hippie, right? Which I'm a total hippie, so I'm down with that. But he goes, "You're cutting down trees," and I remember that really vividly. This is like 10, 15 years ago. And I was like, "Thank you. What a great question. Let's talk about sustainable forestry."
Yes.
And then like lunch and learns with architects at that time, it was the same kind of thing. And, I call it the Lorax syndrome. It's very much this like cultural shift that happened. And I think we see it with every material. We have like distanced ourselves from the realities of where our meat comes from, where our products come from, where all the things in your batteries come from. Like, we just distanced ourselves. And I see a big change in the last 5 to 10 years. That conversation has gotten so much faster and so much easier. So I think it's people like us and the industry itself being really honest. Yes, we're cutting down trees, but do you want to know what happens if we don't? I think Colorado has more than 20% of its standing stock is dead.
Sad.
We have to call these things. It's like a garden. You weed your garden. Like, there's all of this language that we really have to work on to make it an accessible story to people.
Yes.
And then my big thing, and I say this to architects very, very specifically, because they have so much power. We have to listen to the scientists, and the scientists are the foresters. And the foresters are saying, we need markets to regeneratively and sustainably manage these forests.
Yes.
And so we have to keep creating markets and not putting barriers in place. And
Wow.
so it's all of that.
Yes.
Makes people like us like walk. I'm heading to Nashville tomorrow, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to ask some people.
You have to do it.
I would love to.
So I guess the follow-up question to that is back to your role where you are today.
Sure.
Where do you guys source your wood from? How do you collaborate practically with forestry companies, sawmills, be it? And I guess from all of that, like, can you quickly summarize what are your guiding principles for sourcing?
Yeah. So, like I said, Sterling's a 75-year-old company that's had these deep relationships with their lumber suppliers from the beginning.
Yeah.
Our main species is southern pine. So we're one of the largest private purchasers of southern pine. More than 50% of that comes to our facility on rail, super low carbon transport method. And we have these deep collaborative relationships where we also trust our southern pine forests are the fastest growing, highest volume replacing forests, where we trust the foresters that run those mills, that run those forests. And a lot of that is like step one, trust, which I know that it can be really hard. Like there has been bad forestry in the past, but in all of our lifetimes, the North American forests have only grown in volume. So we have to remember that. We have to listen to foresters. And the second guiding principle that Sterling uses, so all of our southern pine is procured under the Sustainable Forestry Initiative certified sourcing standard. And then we also offer chain of custody certification. So for anybody who wants that extra audit, that extra mile, that extra peace of mind, we offer it. But the very base, and again, we only source from the United States, which our states have best management practices that they follow. It's ever since the Clean Air and Water Act, there's even been more that they've put into place to make forests sustainable and regenerative, symbiotic with our with our lives. And so it's a lot of listening. I think like the guiding principle is listening to foresters.
Yep.
That's like my guiding principle always. I'm not going to act like I'm the scientist. They're the scientists. And so a really like clear moment for me with that was I was at the American Forest Congress. I think it was the 9th one that they've had. I think the first one was like very early 1900s, which is super cool. And I was in DC and we had this working group that came out. It was all week. There was all these working groups, policy, practices, products, all this stuff.
Yes.
And one of the sessions was on mass timber. And so, of course, I went to that one. But like, it's mostly foresters and policymakers in the room. There were a few architects, and then just maybe a few others. And at one point, somebody brought up, are we concerned? And this is valid. We can ask questions. Are we concerned that deforestation might become a problem if this market takes off? The only people that raised their hand were architects.
Oh.
Every forester's hand was down. So I'm kind of like, I'm the loudmouth. And I was like, what do the foresters in this room think? And they were just like, we need markets. We are so far from deforestation. We're overstocked. We are overdue. And then the other big thing that I try to remind people, and I know I'm kind of like going on a tangent here, is you can have a healthy saw log market, although our sawmills definitely need support right now, which is another guiding principle of Sterling. We support existing sawmill infrastructure. But you can have a healthy saw log market. You need a healthy pulp log market. You need a healthy biomass market. That whole tree needs healthy markets. So use your paper, get those notebooks out. I mean, like, I'm trying to like remind people that you can't have one of those markets thrive because it needs all of them.
I'm going to tell people that Michaela said use an extra square of toilet paper for next time.
Yes. Get your Post-its, like slap them everywhere. It's a regenerative, I don't know about the adhesive on the Post-its. These ones don't have adhesive. Well, but, the paper itself, we got to keep...
So then that kind of leads very naturally into another question that I had on the list for you, Michaela, which is right now, we've got a critical need for affordable housing across this country, probably across the planet. I'm just going to speak to the U.S. That's kind of where my home's at. And listen, I want you to bridge this big crisis, I would say, right? Critical need for affordable housing. But could you also bridge that with what you're practically doing? Because we know that right now there's a rise in robotics, technology, AI, mass timber systems. So I want to know practically, do you see that same crisis that I'm talking about? And what are your team doing to leverage the newest technologies and help address housing and the different crises that are real for us right now?
Oh, I think this is one of the realest things in construction. And I think everybody has a connection to it somehow. Like I'm
Yes.
in Wisconsin, Madison for like the past few years has had the highest year over year rent increases. Like
Wow.
what? You know, it's a tiny town or tiny city comparatively. And to have that burden on people who are we're just trying to live, right? So
Yes.
this is a huge problem. I did see a chart recently that there are certain states where finally the housing markets are starting to open. That's not happening in the upper Midwest and New England. We continue to have a really low stock. So it's very much something we focus on. And that really started very early on. We met with Homestretch Housing, a workforce housing company developer out of Michigan. And our
Okay.
first project with them was really successful. It was cost effective. And then we did like 3 more projects and we were like, well, hey, this is like, we can do this. This is taking off. Then we worked on the Star Lofts project with Cutler Development in Des Moines, Iowa. That was also an affordable housing project, but it was like multifamily. So now we're getting bigger than just kind of these, 4 units. And the thing that my team is really focused on and working on is, okay, we have a housing crisis. This is a domestic material. We're currently not, we won't be have issues with tariffs because we're not buying lumber from anywhere else. Let's try to use this material that creates jobs, we're trying to make it keep sawmills open.
Yes.
Let's give design manuals. Let's give kits of parts. Let's put together these prefabricated solutions for
Yes.
multifamily, of course, but we also have to be honest that is not the only housing that vernacularly people are going to be utilizing. Single family, we can't keep that out. I know that people think that's not the solution. There are certain areas where that has to be the solution, and that's the vernacular building choice. Or 2 flats, 3 flats, townhouses. So we're saying, okay, these different programs, these different residential programs, how can we modularize it? Panelized modular, maybe volumetric modular for like the bathrooms, the mechanical rooms, which is what we do with one of our partners in Nashville, which is a single family developer called Era Systems. And we're trying to find more forward thinking developers like them who take kits of parts or modular approaches so that we can scale at the right price and put these things up super fast. Their last house went up in like 2 days.
That's insane.
It was so cool because we send them the panels, they assemble the whole wall system, then they just send it to site and lay it, And so we're seeing a lot more interest in that. And we would love to be as much a part of the solution as possible because we take this very cost-effective, high-scale approach. So what we're doing as far as leveraging is creating efficient designs for people to base their models off of.
Okay.
And then from there, we can, kind of continue. Of course, then we got to put a spin on it because everybody's got to have their creativity too. But we give some constraints, add creativity, solve for that market. And that's what we're kind of learning in some of the key markets like Denver area, Nashville area, Wisconsin, Michigan, Texas, these kind of places that are looking for that type of approach. So to be continued.
Okay. Well, so we're aligned that there is a critical need for affordable housing.
100%.
And the second part of that question, which I'd like you to kind of talk a little bit more about, which is what are you doing to maybe even manufacture these panels? Maybe you could share a little bit about behind the scenes. What do you do to actually make these panels? And how are you, if you are leveraging, like I say, robotics, AI is a big hot topic right now. Are you thinking about it? Can you kind of just shed some light on how do these mass timber panels even come together behind the scenes?
Yeah. So I keep kind of referring to that we're very high scale, very high volume, and then that support of the sawmills. So how that all comes together is Sterling runs on 3 module sizes at 3 different thicknesses. Our module sizes are based directly on what we can buy from sawmills to support sawmills today. And we also base all of our work on number 2 material because it's widely available. It's what sawmills want to sell. You know, they don't have to high grade things. They don't have to have an MSR machine. And it's at the right price point, right?
Okay.
So we have all of our panels are 8 foot wide, and then it's nominal, so it gets cut off to about 7 foot 8 inches for the final panel. And then obviously we'll go into fabrication in a second.
Sure.
But then we have a 14 foot, a 16 foot, and an 18 foot. And again, those are off the shelf lumber that sawmills can sell us today. We had a finger joiner at one point. And the reason we bought it is we bought all of the Southern Pine like on the market. And we were like, oh my God, we need to like buy some 10s and 12s and resize it ourselves because we just needed more lumber. But we choose to create this more module-based panel because it's very fast and efficient and easy for us to manufacture. Now, I understand that the design community is not as used to what people might call a smaller or shorter panel, but it's very structurally intelligent from the sense that with a V grade, so with a visual graded panel, which is the most typical, but there are E grades. We just choose not to do that. With a V grade panel, your span for like a 5-ply floor is going to span out about 17, 18 feet. So we are hitting those module sizes and those grid sizes structurally very efficiently. And so it does take a little bit of a mind shift on the design, which is why we have these manuals, why we're trying to develop these kits of parts. But the conversation really comes from the why. Support sawmills today. Use V-grade lumber because it's more cost effective. Have a simpler manufacturing process that's only a few SKUs so you can make a lot more, a lot faster.
Yeah.
Not right for everybody. We know that. But it's very good for affordable housing markets. And it's very good for high-scale, repeatable developments. And then from the... we have a 5-axis CNC machine that we got made domestically by CR Onsrud. So we try to keep as much of that domestic focus anywhere we can. And then from the AI perspective, you know, my BIM and design team are all so much smarter than me. I can tell you that. And I know that they're using these tools to get more efficient on their designs. We have this incredible technical project manager who's coded our processes from design through operations, how we track every panel down to GPS tracking on the trucks. And he's done all that with like the help of AI and development tools. I'm too stupid to understand how he's doing it, but I'm like, great. I'm so happy to have these people on our team who know how to do that type of work. And we allow them the space and creativity to do it.
I love it. It takes a team.
It does.
I guess back to maybe more on the market for a little bit. I'm just curious if you could paint a picture and just tell us the truth, how it is, like the current market conditions for mass timber producers. And what is it like right now? It's November 2025 for the record. What's it like to be a mass timber producer?
Yeah, this year has been hard on everybody. I'm not going to lie about that. So the beginning of the year, what we saw is, there was a lot of like global, political, economic changes that made everybody kind of stop.
Yes.
And so construction kind of stopped and decision-making kind of stopped. And so, you'll see that on people's earnings reports and across the construction industry, I mean, it's been like, 50% down. It's not ideal. We're very lucky as a company because we're in multiple markets. And so like I was saying before with infrastructure development, telecom and things like that, that's booming. We're building a crap load of data centers and they need power. So we're very lucky because we're a very diversified company.
Wonderful.
But that doesn't mean we weren't, we were still building this year. We had a lot of great projects. But what happened from about January, maybe February, March is really when you could start to feel that pause really happen. And then all the way through to like maybe 3 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, everybody just stopped. And I think it was this idea that they were like, this might change and it's a little chaotic and we're just waiting for the dust to settle. And then I think finally everybody was like, the dust isn't settling. It's going to be chaos. Now this is a reality. We got to build. We got housing to build. And I think the big thing from the finance side is no one lets their wealthy people who are financing things, don't let their money sit that long. Like you don't want your money sitting. It's not doing anything if it's sitting. So what we experienced, and a lot of our partners in the industry, I'm always asking this question to everybody. I'm like, how you doing? What are you noticing? How are you experiencing it?
Yes.
About 3 months ago, things started to thaw. People started to make decisions. Things started to move again. I think it was just like everybody's like, all right, this is just how it is. So we need to like keep this thing rolling. So I think we're back on track. I see a big increase coming back. I think it's going to take a little time to catch back up. But one of the things that's a little concerning but exciting is I think the demand is about to go really high, really fast because everybody didn't make decisions and now they want fast decisions. And I think all of us manufacturers are going to have to work together, keep these things rolling. And we're going to do what we can to keep up. But demand is on its way back. 100% we see that. We're not there fully yet, but we're on our way.
And what kind of construction projects are you seeing coming in the future? Is it a mix between residential, privately owned buildings, commercial buildings? Can you walk us through? And have you heard, because I mean, this is kind of just a personal curiosity, is the military potentially going to be using any mass timber? I mean, where could the markets go ideally in the future? I mean, not that I'm asking you to predict the future, but just give us a picture of where mass timber goes and where could it go in the future in terms of the markets for this type of material.
Yeah, it's a great question. So what we're seeing and where we're choosing to focus, and again, our focus is going to be more focused on scale because that's what we need to feed. We got to feed the machines.
Yes.
But multifamily, it's coming. I think it's coming back online. Everybody needs it. I think in a lot of markets, you see a lot of the 3/1, 4/1, 5/1. They're going again. They're moving. We can't move fast enough. That's for sure. So what I think is going on there right now, I was talking to somebody who was at one of the ULI events recently, and that's Urban Land Institute. And so that's very developer driven. It's just the money needs to get to the right place to finance these things. Like the money's there, which is so funny how economics work. But it just needs to get to the right spots. So multifamily for sure. I think that's always going to be a great mass timber play. Nothing feels better than being in a timber building. It's fast to go up. You occupy quicker. You can get higher rents, those types of things.
Sure.
I think the industrial space is going to be really interesting. So we just completed a warehouse for Amazon in Elkhart, Indiana. And they have done such a good job putting out really cool press of why they did it. I mean, they believe in the sustainability. They believe in the why. And so it's really cool to see that as a pilot. And then, we've seen more warehouses from different companies. We have a timber bay system that's kind of a steel strong back with CLT spanning walls that I think will be very popular in the industrial space, especially with how precast is so the timelines are so long right now because it's so in demand. So they're looking for alternatives, which is great. We can share. I'm happy to share. So I think we'll see more of that. And then data center, those not only from the buildings, but we're working with a company called EvoLink Systems on a few patent pending data center interior build out products with CLT, replacing steel. How cool is that? And speed is the name of the game there. I mean, sustainability is a thing, but speed is that is what they care about.
Sure.
So we'll see a lot rolling there. We're focused on that. And then lodging and hospitality is a really cool one because I think that a lot of these companies are, people are still traveling around, people are still going places.
Of
And I think
course.
a lot of these hotels are like, I just want that little edge. Like, how do I get them to come to me? Because I don't think people are as loyal to brands as they used to be. They're like, whatever, I'm going to take the cheap hotel or the cool hotel or whatever that is. And so that's what I've heard. Like, we were at the lodging conference, and a lot of them like, we just want that little edge. So like, what's cooler than a timber ceiling, stuff like that.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
this came from Texas Forest, and we're in Texas. How cool is that? Like, those are the
Stories.
kinds of things that bring people in.
Yeah.
And really repeatable grids, just like a multifamily building. And then kind of the last space. And then in that multifamily residential, I would still include single family and like townhome, just like general residential. Like, there's a great space for that, for mass timber. And then the last space that we really look at, I would call kind of the small box. So like, we've got big box, like warehouses, data centers, and then small boxes, these strip malls, these kinds of the buildings where steel decking has just really had its foothold in. I think we can replace a lot of steel decking with CLT. Again, maybe it's that little differentiator. It's a domestic supply chain. We're not hit with tariffs. It goes up super fast. So those are kind of the markets that we're focused on. I've also seen the institutional market like start up again. So that would be like, universities and libraries and things like that. It's so cool to have mass timber in that product or in those types of projects. For us, they're one-off projects, right? We're not building a ton of those, so we're not as focused there. We do them, and we're happy to support those projects. But
Sure.
I see that being the thing that like opens the gates for mass timber.
Very interesting. To keep us moving forward, some of the terminology that I've been hearing from you on this conversation is like make it more standardized and productized, and those are kind of like some of the themes you've shared a little bit.
Mhm.
And with that, do you think wood could become the alternative to concrete and steel? Maybe it's more predictable, like you were saying, or certified from your background, or industrialized. Is that an opportunity for wood?
Absolutely.
How?
Absolutely. Roofs and floors.
Okay.
I like so floor systems and roof systems are dominated by steel decking and either, precast or hollow core concrete.
Mm.
I still think people believe in sustainability. This isn't going to be the biggest driver, right? But about 75% of a mass timber building, this carbon sequestration is in the plates, so the roofs and the floors. So it's an excellent space, first of all, to make the argument, hey, if we just replaced this steel decking and concrete with CLT, maybe we're going to meet some of those climate goals we keep promising to meet. But also, that's where things are really standardized and similar. You have these floor cassettes, they go in one by one, like your steel decking piece or your precast concrete. That's what a CLT panel is. Like, so it's so much of an easier sell to, contractors and installers, because they're like, yeah, I know how to do this. And even designers, like this very repeatable element. So I think as long as we're getting efficient on design, we're thinking about, it holistically, going up faster, arriving faster. I think that's where we're going to see a big change and a big play. And you can cover it. You don't have to cover it. You mentioned military projects. We did the hotel at Fort Bragg. And that was it was a Candlewood Suites. And it was so cool because like everything was timber and it was all for like blast resistance, right? And then they covered everything up with gyps.
Oh, no.
Because they just wanted it to look like a normal hotel, which is like, I get it, right? And for us, we're like, hey, we still accomplished getting timber into this building. I'm not going to be upset about that. Like, it's the same thing that I feel about like hybrid construction. It's okay to have some steel. Like, what it's going to take and where I think the industry is going to like really take off is the acceptance of products working together.
That's
Using some timber.
yeah, and I feel like we've got to. I want to ask you a direct question.
Sure.
I have seen um, some, let's put it mildly. I'm just going to tell you how it is. I saw a piece of marketing from the other side, from steel, and it was kind of sad. And I can read you and I'll send you the thing that I saw. But
You see it?
there was a picture and there was like a clear cut and like a little stand left. And the quote was, "Is wood really the sustainable choice? Learn or, visit our website to learn the real story," they say. And then they say American made structural steel consists of more than 93% recycled content that helps eliminate landfills instead of destroying natural habitats. And there's a little, sign that says Piglet's house. And then there's Pooh that's like all upset.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's
So,
people's heartstrings, Oh, they're
yeah. And then I went to that website and then there's this big thing that I read and I could send you this separately. I'm not going to call them out on it, but just I will read to you so that we can have an honest conversation about this. Um, And I agree to what you said earlier. There's got to be a working together relationship. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but I don't understand why. I'm just reading to you right now. I have it open on my screen. It says myth versus fact, the sustainability of steel versus timber. Myth, mass timber construction is more sustainable than steel construction. Fact, many of the claims about mass timber sustainability are misleading and overstated, while the superiority of steel's sustainability is undeniable and backed by hard data. And then they go on to say, I don't know where the numbers are coming from because there's not like a reference here, unfortunately, but it says when evaluating sustainability, it's important to consider the full life cycle impact of mass timber. Unfortunately, under these considerations are routinely ignored in calculating a wood structure's environmental impact. I'll just read to you this last bullet point. They're saying as little as 36% of a harvested tree ends up as a final wood product, which means 64% goes to waste. Some of the biomass is left to decay in the forest, some is sent to landfills, and the rest is burned, all of which releases CO2 into the atmosphere on day one, canceling the benefits of long-term carbon sequestration. I'm going to pause there,
oh,
unquote. I'll let you respond
boy.
to the ad and then the myth versus fact busting situation here.
Okay. Where do we start? That's a lot. Okay. First, let's start with the claim that only like 30% is used. I'd have to ask some of the foresters I work with. That does not seem like an accurate statistic. So I'm curious where it comes from. And, if it is, it might be in a place like a really isolated place where like the pulp mill closed or something because everybody paper is bad. I don't know. That one's hard to understand.
Michaela,
Um,
one
yeah.
second. Can you hear me? You
Yeah.
cut out for a second.
Oh no.
After I read the last quote, I'll have my team edit it back in.
Okay.
But can you respond to the statistic
Okay.
like one more time?
Sure.
Because you dropped off and it kind of went.
Oh, I'm
Anyways,
sorry.
my team will cut this piece out, and as soon as I finish reading, I'll let you respond one more time. But I
Okay.
was saying their claim is as little as 36% of a harvested tree ends up as a final wood product, which means 64% according to this thing that I got on my screen, which is like a published deal. They're saying 64% goes to waste. Can you respond to that, Michaela?
We would need to know the source of that. That's not been my experience, and I know you visited a lot of different forest products manufacturers as well.
Yes.
Every manufacturing facility I've been to has very low waste, extremely low waste, uses everything. Our plant's a great example. We'll use if there is chipping at the end of a life cycle. So we have a product like a mat that gets used in these roads I was talking about. They degrade over time, and they did also make a statement that leaving biomass in the forest leads to which isn't true because it'll decompose and actually sink carbon back into the soil. And those are called critter cribs. It's a big part of forest management. So it actually creates habitat for animals. So not accurate. But we'll actually use, after material has degraded or started to degrade, we'll use it for animal bedding. We'll send it to our local arboretum, which again actually decays into the soil and adds carbon to the soil. For anybody who doesn't know, soils are actually like the number one solution to climate change and keeping carbon in soils. There's actually some regenerative agriculture practices where they bury timber to keep adding carbon to the soil, which I think is just like the coolest thing. So there's so many cool ways we can use timber and either put it back. Maybe it ends up incinerated, but a lot of that goes to like combined heat and power. Okay, so like that's not quite how that works. And then I think the thing that they're really leaving out in these statistics, all of this is backed up by data. So most of these materials, including steel, have environmental product declarations that are run by product category rules. They're audited, they're third-party verified, they run under ISO and EN standards, and you can compare that data. My experience comparing that data is what they're saying isn't accurate. It's not better, it's different. So we also need to be careful there. Like recycled steel is great, and I would love to keep using recycled steel. It's the better choice. We're still going to be using steel. It uses a lot of power. So what's your power source coming from? But so do mills. We use power too. So
Yes.
It's all comparable, and yes, we're all trying our best, and yes, we're all trying to make improvements. I keep reaching my hand out to the steel industry and saying hybrid buildings are the play. Let's do this together. That's how we can get the costs to work. That's how, sure, maybe there's a sustainability story there too. Let's tell it together. And more and more and more, I think steel's getting better about it. I do. I'm really positive because I think I'm seeing it. Like, I think they're getting better. I don't know.
I love how you're building or trying to build a relationship and bridge these wildly different, but both very necessary materials. I think it shouldn't be steel versus timber. We should be working together, like you said. So maybe can I ask you, have you seen a hybrid building, or just bring maybe a project that you have in mind? I want to share one with you while you're thinking, but where's an example of a mass timber, say, project? It wasn't just used as a construction material. Sure, it was in the ways that we've talked about, but it was a tool for like a social or a community transformation. While you're thinking, I want to share that I went through the Portland airport, that PDX, and oh my goodness, like I've got all kinds of footage. I think it was like dead tired the first time I saw it. I landed from like some crazy flight situation. And once you walk out there, it is just like, it's hard to describe in words, but I'll have my team throw in some of that footage here to like show you instead of tell you about it. But you feel different. It feels warm and inviting and all those things that we talk about, but like you have to go see it to believe it. I don't know. It just feels right. And I think there's a lot there. Maybe I'll come back to the Portland Airport project. If you could share one that you've seen where, like I say, this mass timber, it wasn't just like a construction material, like here we are, we set it in place, it was all numbers and everybody wins and leaves a job site. But it was a tool, like I say, for a social or community transformation.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, first of all of them should be, because they should all be supporting these supply chains, and we should think of it that way. But what a project we worked on that the team was amazing and we really told the story was the Jessup Memorial Library. It's in Bar Harbor, Maine. It utilized eastern hemlock panels, so vastly underutilized species that needs markets for those forests to be revitalized. So we worked with University of New Hampshire Extension and their forestry teams. We worked with the local sawmills. We worked with the architect, Simon's Architects, the engineer, Thornton Tomasetti out of Portland, Maine. And even the contractor was super on board. So it was like one of those like dreamy projects where everybody was in it and excited and like, everybody was just there to make it happen. And why it was such a great piece was, Maine and upper New England, those communities, as those markets have gone down for their timber, it's really difficult. They're very isolated up there. That was the industry. It's the same thing in northern Wisconsin. we still have some of that industry, and they're working to pull it all back again. And I think there's a tie to affordable housing there that we'll see come out in the next year or so. There's a lot of people working on it, but they told this really beautiful story through a library, which sharing knowledge. The owner was 100% in it, and they said, we want this to be New England forests. We want this to be the kind of material that supports New England forests. So there's eastern hemlock panels and a few spruce pine fir south panels as well. So for anybody that doesn't know, spruce pine fir south just means south of the Canadian border. So it's just US SPF. But that was such a rewarding and amazing project to work on, mostly because everybody was committed to that being the driving principle. We're going to work together. We're going to collaborate. We're going to create this collaboration for this building to provide jobs and markets for these communities. Yes. And then we're going to tell the story. And they have done just a phenomenal job. And so that's like a smaller scale piece. But, I think that you can tell very similar stories for really large projects too. That, again, I would highly recommend people look up the Amazon warehouse. It's called DII5 or D105. And if you look up, they had like 40 some sustainability initiatives that they put into this thing. Wow. And the other thing that's really cool, I look at the pictures and you like watch the little like robots move things through, but like there's this gorgeous background. And get right, I'm going to put a little conspiracy like stuff in here. I think, so I told you I'm kind of dumb. I don't know how to use AI or any of that stuff. But I think we got to keep the robots happy too, okay? We got to keep the people happy and the nice, like, nothing feels better than wood. It makes you feel good, like you said. And so maybe these warehouses and data centers need to all be like nice biophilic spaces too, because we got to keep the robots happy too.
Ooh.
I'm just saying.
You know what? I am going to look it up after this call. And I would also offline ask you if it's possible to go there maybe with you and do a story together and kind of like share it to our audience. We've talked about it and would love to go there with you maybe if we get authorization to like film it and obviously get all the approvals. We've done that tons of times with our agency, but that would be pretty incredible to show what's possible and what's the benefits, and ask their team about why did you choose to do this when you could have done anything else. And I mean, it could be a great plug for your organization, but just if that's the trends and the directions, like let's go talk about it. Let's continue to showcase and highlight. How I just want to be the opposite. I think I want to be the light instead of the gloomy news that you always see on social media, and they're trying to clickbait you and rage bait you into like clicking on something so they could shove an ad in your face. I mean, I feel like people are tired of that. And honestly, people are tuning out from different sources, whether it's on social media or TV stations, etc. Like, I do want to share stories that help communities. And you specifically mentioned it during our conversation, but I guess maybe that's a question back at you is with that one, with the library, how does you've emphasized about how does Sterling make it such that every mass timber project supports you kept referring to it, this entire ecosystem of forester, trucker, mill worker, craft people, whatever other kind of people, architects, blue collar, white collar, like all of it together, working together for the benefit of that project, that community staple piece. It could be house of worship, a library, a university. We need these places. How do you see us coming together?
Yeah. I mean, it's all where we started. It's what you and I keep talking about. It's this connection across the whole supply chain. Our company is focused, and, I'm not saying USA is the best. I'm saying that in your own community, support your own community. I'm about an hour from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Why are those really cool, exciting buildings made out of European material supporting European forests when they should be made out of U.S. materials supporting U.S. forests? I'm not saying we don't need a global economy. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but let's start in our backyards and support the people around us first, because that's the only way that it can expand out. And so with Sterling, I think it's really cool for 75 years that this company has focused on US sourcing and creating US manufacturing jobs and supporting US markets. I mean, that like, so let's use the Amazon warehouse as an example, or any project that we do. Any project that we do supports 2 manufacturing facilities, one in South Chicago, an extremely urban, economically depressed industrial area that saw a lot of stuff leave. And we have a 500,000 square foot facility there that supplies over 100 jobs to that local community.
Wow.
That's an urban environment. How cool is that? Then we have Lufkin, Texas. That's in a rural environment. It's right next to a sawmill. That also is supporting that community, creating local manufacturing jobs. Now you look at the sawmills that we buy from, again, all U.S. Grown and milled lumber. You said it, loggers, foresters, truckers, like kilns, finishing mills, all of these things are getting supported by every project that you get from us, because that's our sourcing story and that's what we believe in. I have architects say to me, oh, I really like that European spruce. And I say, that's great. You can go get it. But just remember, like I had a project in Texas that said that they wanted European spruce. And I was like, I can get you Texas Southern pine. Oh, I like the look of it. Well, hey, what about this option? Here's Texas Southern pine, and here it is with whitewash from Sanson. It almost looks like European spruce, but now you're supporting your local community. So it's just making those connections in people's brains of like, we want our buildings to support our communities. And I think that the buildings in, Austria and Germany should be supporting their communities, and Finland and Sweden. Like, that is the coolest thing on earth about the timber industry, is it can support everyone's communities. So start with yours.
Yes.
I love saying, hey, let's look at the US. We're all in this together. What a great way to all come together. Let's support our sawmills. Let's support our mill or our kilns. Let's support all these things. But that takes designers understanding what they're specifying. And so that's the key, is this connection across that supply chain, helping tell those stories, helping people understand, helping people know we're not cutting down the forest, we're growing more volume of forests. And I'll leave you with a really great statistic.
Please.
Sterling has made over 1 million CLT panels. We crossed that border this year. And I was looking it up and I was like, okay, what does this mean? Because we had some people go, oh, should we say that? Are people going to be worried about that being cut down a lot of forests? So I ran it through. Woodworks has this great calculator and has all the assumptions on what goes through it. So I highly recommend, don't take my word for it. Go to Woodworks, look at the assumptions that go behind it. But they have a calculator for North American. So this is both North American or both US and Canada, because they're funded by SLB. But North American forest regrowth and how long it takes to grow the equivalent volume of 1 million panels. What do you think that number is? How long do you think?
1 million panels.
1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume?
I guess it depends on the volume of those panels, but I'm just going to throw a year out there. Is it a year? 1 year?
This is so great. I was just at a lunch and learn, and they were like, 12 years, 7 years, 66 hours. How freaking cool is that? I was like, no one can argue with that. If our volume is growing that fast, like, all right, that's so awesome. What a cool regenerative resource. Like,
wait, but now say it one more time.
Okay,
as a
according to the Woodworks carbon calculator that calculates like how long, and they have all the assumptions. So again, please go there and see the assumptions of what's behind these calculations. But according to that, the equivalent, and I based it off of our largest panel, so 8 by 18, and a mix of 3, 5, and 7 ply. 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many years do the North American forest take to grow that volume? 1 million panels worth of lumber. How many ye that to make 1 million panels, it only takes North American forests 66 hours to grow that volume of wood.
What? That's insane.
It's so cool. It's so cool. You know, steel can recycle 93%, but we can't, you know, we can't put that iron ore back in a mountain. Or like with concrete, the big thing was sand, right? Like we're extracting sand out of areas, and we need all of it. I'm not gonna like point my fingers at them and say it's good or bad, but we do need to be honest. We need to stay connected to our materials, and we just need to continue to do better. That's
I love all of it. Can I, in closing, ask you a
Yeah.
couple of things about the future? Now that we really talked about a lot about current state and how we got here, let's think a little bit about, let's dream. I'm not going to hold you to it, but I'm a big dreamer. I love to think forward. So, Michaela, what do you see as the next big leap for mass timber in design, technology, policy, what have you?
Next big leap. I think the next big leap is community connection. I know I just keep saying that, but it's so lame, but that's what I think it is. I think this next stage is, okay, now we've made mass timber a thing. Now let's make mass timber that support our communities a thing. That's what I think the next leap is.
That's
I don't
powerful.
even think it's a leap. I think it's a little step. It only takes a little step. We're so close.
Would you say education is very important to make that happen?
The biggest thing.
Let's keep sharing that message.
Exposure. Yeah. Exposure.
So, I've been trying to do it, but would love to continue this relationship with you and your team. And when you have a cool project to go to, ring me up. I'll give you my cell phone number and be like, Vadim, I
Here we
need
go.
you in such and such time and place. We're going to need to do a vlog and tell the young people, the next generation, of these cool projects that you're working on.
Let's do it.
So imagine a perfect city 20 years into the future. What role does wood play in it?
Oh, so many. First, lots of trees growing. We need that to keep things cool, to, you know, limit the cooling load on our spaces. There's all these really great studies on how urban trees actually facilitate better like lung quality for kids, like less asthma, all this cool stuff.
Yes.
So the urban forests are thriving and biodiverse. And then I definitely see a lot of mass timber buildings, probably hybrid, but a lot of mass timber in those buildings. Because it feels so good, and hopefully made from a species group that's like at least within like 1,000 miles. I'll be nice. We'll do like 1,000 miles.
Yes.
And you know, I think that I think those are the big things, is that connection of saying, hey, here's the trees growing. I'll plug another group. There's this company called Unified Wood Economy that does urban tree milling. So like anything that comes out of urban forests, because again, they're just like regular forests and need to be managed. Things come down, then they regrow, all this kind of stuff. So they're managed like a forest, and they do this really cool sawmilling. They sell to like big instruments and do really cool facade systems. I think they work with cambium carbon. Wow. So again, and then they create jobs in these communities. They've got one in Memphis, and I know they're expanding to DC and Baltimore. So it's just so cool. Like, I think it's just getting people back connected to the wood.
I love that. I go around and I hear a lot of issues across the whole supply chain, issues with workforce and attracting the next generation. So Michaela, if you could speak to the young people who may be listening, or maybe it's their parents or, you know, an uncle that can pass this message along to the young person, you know, what would you say to young people who hesitate to enter the forestry or wood industry, this wood world, as I call it? And it's, for me and you, it's not a job, but a mission. And could you give a word of encouragement to the next generation? Are there jobs available? What are they? How do people get in? Speak to them.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. Please come join us. We absolutely need people. This is a funny way to say it, but we have a little bit of a silver tsunami in our industry. So a lot of folks at retirement age ready to pass the torch, and we don't have a lot in between. It's a really, really difficult time for us in our industry with that specific piece. So there's space, and there's space for everyone. When I'm an engineer, even in Helsinki, even in Finland, I was the only woman in my program. And when I first started in this industry, oh my God, I think I've been going to the Mass Timber Conference ever since the second one. And I remember the second one walking in and being like, oh my God, I don't fit here. I don't belong here. But what was so great is I had these incredible mentors from Forest Products Lab and different companies who would just bring me into the conversation. And so I ask everybody too, who's in the industry, please reach out. Like, we need to be inviting and we need to be welcoming, because that made all the difference for me. That made all the difference to be like, oh, maybe I don't look like everybody in here, but I'm welcome here. And that's one of the things that I love about the wood products industry is, there's so many amazing people. There's such a rich history. And it is a regenerative industry, and we have so many mission-based people. That's probably why a lot of them are like, holding on and not retiring, because they want more people to come in and do this. So if you believe in that connection to the forest, if you want something, there's so many different opportunities in the forest products industry, all the way from forestry and being a field forester and being into those environments, to research, to engineering, to design, to computer, statistical programming. Like, every degree is welcome, every background, whether it's degreed or not, trades, experience, it's all welcome. And we just need lots of people to help us preserve these forests and keep them for the generations to come. And it takes
I
thriving
love them.
markets.
Yes. Michaela, thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope
Yeah,
you did as well. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we connected. It was a pleasure to hear from your heart how much you absolutely love this industry. You're passionate about the people you're serving, the communities that are, being impacted by such positive materials that are used out there on a daily basis. I would love to see your projects in action on one of the Wood World out in the field episodes of our vlog.
sure.
I want to see it across the board, from industrial uses, maybe the Amazon warehouse or somebody's new home that's being built. Ideally, these are these are locations where we can see the exposed mass timber panels, and we can actually touch them and
That's
feel
most
them.
common. That's most common.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely incredible. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have had this conversation with you. Michaela, thank you so much. And again, this was Michaela. She is the vice president of mass timber at Sterling Structural. And again, thank you so much for having the opportunity, making time to connect, and telling us about your story, your journey, and how you are impacting the world with wood.
Thanks so much, Vadim. Back at ya.